Hi there, my name's Sue Cooper. I'm an artist and art tutor based in West Sussex in the UK. I am starting my oil challenge today and we're going to try a few techniques. We're going to try sgraffito, which is scratching into the paint and using a fan brush. And we are going to start off with this quince. So I chose the quince just because it was a really lovely kind of simple, manageable design for a very start of my oil painting journey. It just started mapping it out on my page. So I'm using a canvas board. I'll put the materials in my description so you can check out to see what I'm using. But I'm just mapping out the general design that I've got. I'm looking at the negative shapes as well. So by that I mean the difference between the stem and the leaf and the quince. So there's a little space in between. So it's more like the negative spaces rather than the positive spaces, which would be those objects. And I've started off with a lemon yellow mix, adding a little bit of white there for the highlight. And I've also got a little bit of yellow ochre for the warmer shades. I'm just knocking down there just to add a little bit of depth to it. If you make a mistake, you can just rub it off with a cloth, which is brilliant. So it might not get rid of all of the colour, but you can certainly get it down so that you can lay some more paint over the top. So don't feel like if you've made a mistake you need to wait for your oil painting to dry. That is not the case. So to add a little bit of extra colour as well, I'm using cadmium red for the darker shades. And I've just gone straight in with the background. So I'm using my yellow ochre. I decided actually that I thought that it was a bit wishy-washy. So sometimes when you put on a colour and you've used the solvents or medium, you can use that interchangeably. So in my case, I'm using Sansador. And Sansador acts as a sort of a dilutant to the colour and it ends up being a bit wishy-washy. But if you use titanium white and you add that into the mix, then it makes more of a solid colour. It does dull it a little bit, I must say, but it does really help the paint go on in more of a consistent manner. And what you just saw me doing there, I was just going over with the same brush stroke. So I wanted to give a bit of uniformity, if that's a word, to the background. So I was going up and down because I sort of wanted that to be the impression. And my goal for this painting was to try and get some smooth blended effects rather than be impressionistic as such, because it's quite difficult to get colours blending in together well. So for that background for the table, I used a bit of yellow ochre, a bit of ultramarine, a bit of cadmium red, I think, probably a bit of alizarin crimson in places as well. And I added a bit of a darker mix towards the right hand side because that's where the shadow is coming. So the shadow is kind of bouncing off the white wall behind it. The light is shining sort of on the left hand side, but the shadow is being cast on the right hand side. So it's a little bit darker there. And you can use the same kind of effect of sort of smoothing things along with a brush. And you really want to get dark, like a nice dark edge, so you've got nice contrast between the light and the dark, and so it will actually look like it's sitting on something. Adding that shadow really makes it look like it's sitting on something. So it actually had two kind of cast shadows. There was the one to the right, which you'll see me doing now, and it was a bit light around that by the leaf that I haven't painted in yet. So I've got a fan brush there, which I recommend you trying if you haven't already. And just using it very, very lightly is a great way of just blending in the colours really subtly. And I did the same thing with the background and it worked really well. Obviously it's hard to go around some objects with that, but you can also use a sable brush, I discovered. Doesn't look like I'm doing any painting here, but I promise you I am. I've got the titanium white there. This is the brickwork of the piece behind. So there's a wall, the yellow ochre wall, and then there's the sort of the brickwork. And so I'm trying to do that one a little bit more impressionistic-y because that's got, you can sort of see little shades of bricks in it. So I'm trying to be here just a little bit more brickworky. So you try and think of the texture that you're trying to represent. I'm trying to mix up a green here, and I used my colour chart that I prepared earlier. So this is a mix of yellow, lemon yellow, ultramarine. I probably did some other mixes as well, just to, because I really like variation in my leaves and greens and things, because I mean that people often think, well, this is a green leaf, but there are so many different variations in the tones and the colours. So I tended to mix quite a bit on the paper, in this instance the card itself. This is oil card, oil board they call it, by Daler Rowney. I realised that I'd gone over a little bit too far on the quince, so I just changed that a little bit and rubbed a bit off, and I'll go over later with a little bit more lemon yellow. There, what you see are some credit card scratching. So that's a bit of a sgraffito effect. So sgraffito in Italian means scratching, basically. So you can get some really lovely effects by scratching into something. So having scratched in and got the veins, I'm also just trying to add a little bit of variation in between those veins, just to give it a little bit of realism there. And I'm not producing a masterpiece. I mean, the point of this is it's an oil challenge. I'm learning different techniques over the course of the 28 days. And I'm trying to give myself an hour or so on each of the paintings. I'm not going to be spending much more than that, because I unfortunately have other things to do than just paint all day. So where there are highlights, I'm trying to add a little bit of yellow. If you add a little bit of titanium white into that, that really makes it lighter and pop more. And just kind of any variation in those shades will do good. And you can use the fan brush to sort of blend things out as well. So where I'd made a mistake earlier, I'm just going along with the lemon yellow, and actually I changed this later because I realised I liked the wavy look of the leaf that I didn't quite represent, I didn't quite capture. So I did go back and change that later. So just adding a little bit of alizarin crimson there. When you're putting the brush strokes on, try and follow the form. So where I've kind of got the cadmium red, alizarin crimson, I'm just trying to feel the form, and that'll give you a sense of roundness. So just doing some finishing touches here, just adding some little extra darks and shadows. And again, trying to smooth them along. You can see some of the line work where I've used the fan brush, but here I'm just adding a little bit of titanium white because I wanted a bit more of a contrast between that leaf and the table. And to me, it didn't look like the quince was sitting on anything quite yet, so I've added a bit of an extra stronger dark under the quince, and then just using a fine rigger brush for the details. And I found that the rigger brush was brilliantly helpful for doing thin lines. If you use it quite diluted, it really works to get thin lines. So that's definitely a technique that I shall be using again. I was just adding a little bit of yellow ochre and white just to indicate that sort of snapped off bit of twig. I went over a bit too much with the twig when I was painting it on, so I'm just cutting in essentially with the yellow ochre mix for the background to make that thin again. Now we're nearing the end of this quince video. It was my first still life of my oil challenge, and it was a perfect one to start off with because it was quite a simple design, nothing too complicated, and allowed me to test out some different techniques. If you'd like to see the real-time video, there is a real-time video available on my Patreon page, and there's also a PDF page of step-by-step instructions so you can follow along yourself and work on the techniques that I practiced in this session as well. Thanks very much for watching this video and joining me on my oil challenge. Any comments that you have would be greatly appreciated, and if you could like and subscribe, that would also be very much appreciated as I grow this channel. I'll see you at the next one.